So basically, when we talk about the hero journey is a lot of things, and you saw the movie about it, and Richard Campbell, and all of this. And but I will do a little bit of a short review of it. Just will be starting from the same level, and then I'm gonna basically go deeper into stuff you definitely didn't hear or see in movies. So the hero journey is basically something that actually older than Joseph Campbell even. The first guy who came up with it was actually Otto Rank, a friend of Sigmund Freud, a student of Sigmund Freud, but that was even a few decades before. But what was Joseph Campbell's brilliance about it, and I will show that the hero journey, I think it's one of the most revolutionary discoveries of the 20th century in many ways, and especially in this case, what we talk about life coaching and self-development, actually more than what is known for, which is basically script writing. But what Joseph Campbell do, he took all the great stories of humanity, Gilgamesh stories, the Exodus, which it's very interesting, and I will talk a lot about it afterward. The life of the Buddha, the life of Krishna, the journey of Hercules, whatever you think about, he took all the famous stories, and he come to the idea. What he really saw, he saw that it all tell the same story. It's all the same formula, and he wondered, how can it be the same formula? What on earth make people in so unrelated traditions come with exactly the same kind of pattern? And what he understood is that for a story to be kept for thousands of years, it have to touch the people. And for something to touch the people, it must be their story, which means it must be their story in a sense that it really touch them and move them, and they feel related to it. This is the only way that people will keep a story for thousands of years. If it starts being irrelevant, unless they have a very, very, I would say, very strong kind of fundamental system of preserving stories, they will just lose it. So it has to be something that is very relevant to the people who learn it. And for a story to be relevant for the people who learn it, it must be their story. In disguise, covered, masked, weird, in all kind of weird way, but it must be their story. And it has to be relevant. It means that you have the information still encapsulated, that it helps them in their life in some ways. So actually what he really understood, that this is the formula, the universal formula for human evolution. So, and this is actually something that was very brilliant, and he even saw it himself. But what happened that some guy who was a scriptwriter took his research, make a movie, which was becoming the most famous movie and successful movie in history, Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that movie actually make Hollywood think the hero journey is really cool. And once he thought hero journey is really cool, it became the second thing you learn when you go to scripting class in any school in Hollywood or any film school in the world will be the hero journey. And everything now is based on the hero journey, basically. I can tell you that it evolved a lot. For example, Disney developed their own hero journey, which is female hero journey. They're not the one who developed it, actually developed by very serious researchers, feminist researchers, some of them, because they saw that the hero journey in its original form is very biased toward the masculine. When you talk about
Could you repeat those last two sentences? I couldn't quite understand.
it was very biased toward the masculine.
Yeah.
So actually there is some version of the hero journey which is more feminine. There are some version of the hero journey which go to much greater details than the other. But actually, when you know how to look at it, the hero journey appear in many traditions already, very ancient. For example, the Tarot system is the hero journey. The Tarot system is the hero journey, the major arcane specifically. Also the minor arcane, but they are another theme. I can't go into it now, it's really deep. In Kabbalah, you have the 42 journeys of the Jewish people when they were in the desert, and each part of the journey, basically the journey from Egypt, which represent in Kabbalah totally ruled by ego, like being totally narcissistic asshole and childish asshole, toward going to the promised land, which being enlightened being, a bodhisattva, a tzaddik, if you want. And these are 42 lessons that the soul have to learn to do this journey of total spiritual transformation and personal transformation. Actually, they are not so unrelated. Actually, I say it now in really short. If you want, you can ask me afterward later. In my idea, one of the most revolutionary discoveries actually of Jung, and then Joseph Campbell took it further, that spirituality and psychology are not unrelated. They must be connected, and it's under the great myth of the star sign of Scorpio, which is actually the only star sign that represent three animals, which are basically the snake, the Scorpio, and the eagle. Actually, even in Hebrew and Kabbalah, it has the meaning because Akrab and Nachash and Nesher are, I can't, maybe later I'll go into it. It's very interesting how even the letters are. But basically, Scorpio represents somebody whose energy is very locked in a kind of post-traumatic fear, I don't know, complex, some kind of a really horrible or not so horrible neurosis. When you the Scorpio, the poison of the Scorpio is in the tail, which is unconscious. It's really in the back. He's not aware of his poison, but he's very toxic, basically. So actually, it's what is called, and in the next workshop we talk about the shadow, which is a very important aspect in the hero journey and in general in human psychology. So it's all his toxin is in basically unconscious, and this is why it's very dangerous, because he kind of pretend he has light, or he has a really fake identity which look very nice, but it's just cover for something really dark and childish usually. And you can't really sublime, transform, elevate, enlighten part of you that you are not willing to acknowledge that exists in you. So unless you use therapy, so therapy is what takes you from being a Scorpio and being a snake. A snake is somebody who's functional. He is aware of his poison. He actually uses poison. The snake poison is in the head. And he is very, let's say, it's like the normal functional, the ideal of our society, all the Donald Trumps and people like this, the successful people of the world are snakes, basically. They are very into the senses. They have some potency. They are some kind of powerful, but they don't aspire high. All they want is a kind of surface level. And then the eagle is somebody who transcends, who go high, the spiritual guy, the idealist, the philosopher, the mystic. And the thing is that most of the spiritual teaching are coming to take you from a snake form into an eagle form, while most of the therapy comes to take you from a Scorpio form into a snake form. And in the spirituality of like the East, I don't know, 500 years ago, you didn't need so much therapy because people were not as screwed up as we are today. Mother were much more functional. People were living in a much more natural kind of way. So people were not so neurotic and broken, basically, from the core. Our society is very, very unnatural society. It includes all the ritual of rite of passages, empowerment rituals, all the ways that make a person live in harmony in a community and with himself and grow in a harmonious way. So we are sometimes 40 years old and we start like children, like emotionally stunted children, and so on. So in our generation, psychology is really needed in conjunction with spirituality, the way I see it. And this is why the hero journey is the complete formula, because it has both the journey from Scorpio to a snake and from a snake into an eagle, basically. It's a very complete model.
The eagle is the highest spiritual.
Yeah, the person who is elevated, who is spiritually awakened, who is spiritually.
But what about the aspect of the eagle that is eating the?
That's another story. But the eagle, if you take the Garuda, for example, because I have so much to cover and I don't want it to be very practical workshop, I just say that the Garuda, like the mythical eagle or the condor sometimes, is eating the snakes. You always see that this is the animal of Vishnu, basically, which represent the god as a preserver power, and he ate the snake. What does he eat? What is the snake that he eat? How does he eat them? He takes the snake, the power which already kind of recognized, with the poison recognized, take it up, he elevate it into consciousness. That's actually what it represents. And yes, and a lot of time you can see in movies, I don't know, Lord of the Ring, Gandalf fight the demon, the Borlog. What does he do? He goes very deep to the cave in Moria of the Borlog. Don't know who's geek here and know the stories of the Lord of the Ring. And then he pulled the demon up to the top of the mountain and then he defeated him. Because you have to go to where the trauma is, where the darkness is, and then you pull the dragon or the demon or the trauma or the defense mechanisms that manipulate your life and make you really contract an act of fear into awareness and into love and into expansion, and then you can really heal them. Then you can kill the demon in a way, or transform the demon sometimes. Sometimes the demon is the treasure in a way. It's the next workshop, but just always the hero, which is the knight. We have to understand why the knight is the one who killed the dragon. It's also an archetype, which is very interesting. But he go into the cave and he kill the dragon, and then he get a treasure. But sometimes the dragon is the treasure. Actually, ultimately, the dragon is always the treasure. I can't go into it. It's kind of a very deep idea. The eagle is actually the snake. Sometimes you have in some tradition, like the Maya, and even in Egypt, the snake, in Greek, the snake with the wings. That's the elevated snake. Actually, that's Kundalini. And when the snake come up, it becomes, snake represent time. So it's going from linear time into circular time. It's when the snake all the way up and down, the microcosmic orbit, the Kundalini rise, then go again. That's a whole story in itself that create from linear time, which is fragmented into the cosmic time in a way, into the time of magic, sometimes dream time, if you be an Aborigine, sometimes trance. But it's not really trance. Trance is just a mode of being. But that's another thing that maybe I can't cover right now. So what I can cover is that basically the hero is going through a journey which has very set kind of steps along the way. And now I just say the steps in kind of a general way and explain what they are. And then we're going to cover some of them. We're going to go through some of them. And as he go along these steps, he also transform, and some things that were not accessible to him before become accessible, which are generally the 4 archetypes of the hero, and then other things. Then he have all kind of really surprising things, like he discover his higher self, or his contracted divinity, if you want, and he discover his shadow, and all his suppressed part become to life, and there are other things that he found, but that's not for now. And also one more philosophical thing to say, it's not only one hero journey. Every hero journey is the beginning of the new hero journey. Actually, it's like a spiral going like this. As I said, there are 42 lessons for the soul, or 22 if you take Tarot. So each deep lesson like this, actually, because it's a fractal, you go through all the lesson in a really minor way, but there's the major lesson in which you really learned. And so it can take some time. And some of us, I believe, in past lives, so I can tell you some of us were going through a lot of hero journeys already. That's why some people like Ramana Maharishi, they started from maybe the 1 or 2 last parts of the hero journey to go into non-duality and full enlightenment, and some are not there at all, because basically he might have passed through a lot of other hero journeys already. And so it's like when you already pass through a hero journey, usually it's just like remembering something. Sometimes just reading a book or a sentence or having something in life really trigger this, and you kind of get it. Otherwise, if you then didn't go through this hero journey, or soul didn't go before, it can take a long time, sometimes many lifetimes. It depends. So now I'll go through the steps in the hero journey. So the first one is when you are in a routine. And when you are in a routine means you live in an automatic way. You are stuck in something that usually work for you, which means it's usually something that you are very adaptable to, and something you sacrifice a lot to be adaptable to. I study, I don't want to tell you how many years, to get to be a programming engineer, whatever, and got really good job. When I was 24, I earned more than both my parents, who had a career for, 30 years. And I worked hard for this. But it was a routine. I understand that it's not me. I'm not growing there. And then usually what happens when you have this routine, and it's not, what before gave you a lot of meaning, if to get really good grades and have really good software was giving you a lot of satisfaction, it stopped giving you satisfaction. That's the first step. It's actually, I give it as a parallel to the Exodus, the Jewish people, because it's something that everybody kind of know. So in this story, I also will have some parallel to the Bhagavad Gita later. I promise people. So the idea was that they came to Egypt, and at the beginning it was fun. At the beginning, everything worked well and was a hunky-dory. But then there was a time for growth. They already matured. It actually what represent in a teenage kind of years. The ego developed. We learn a lot of things. It's fun to take my space. It's fun to be a bit naughty. It's fun to, cheat in the classroom. We have to learn a lot of things. But then there is a moment in which whatever we learn kind of thing become also a cage. Whatever this routine become a cage, it loses its meaning. You have to grow. And then there's something called the call for adventure. The call for adventure is something that sometimes We felt it even when we were children, but we again suppressed, denied it because it didn't fit what our parents want us, what role we're supposed to play. So basically, this call can be actually something that some people see it as a curse. Why can I be like everybody? Why I'm different and unique? Why do I have to be the outcast, the weirdo? But you have the call, and when you come, you can't really refuse it. Even what most people do is refusing the call, denying the call, avoiding the call. There are a lot of ways our ego or defense mechanism do to make us not follow the call or take it responsibility, take it in a way which is like serious. Like for a lot of people, it's kind of delay mechanism. I met a lot of people who work still in high tech, like when they're 40, and they're just going to retire next year when they make another $1 million or something. But it will never comes basically because it's kind of a delay mechanism. Next year it also will not be enough, or you just need to do another thing. Or there is a way that the ego play which make it really huge. If I make a change, everything will collapse. Nobody will love me. I will be totally homeless in 1 week, or other thing like this. Or I can't handle, I don't know, doing a retreat and being in silence for 2 days. I can't even be silent for 1 day or something, or 1 hour, or something that we sometimes enlarge how big the task is, or small ourselves, make ourselves feel really small, or all kind of other ways. There's many tricks, but we have very good mechanism of basically denial or refuse our call. So you can see sometimes in movies like Bilbo, oh, I don't want to go into the adventure, or let's stay in the Hobbit and eat something with Gandalf, and it's so tasty, and I don't know. They always, you can see in movies a lot of time how the hero refuses the call. But if it's true calling, it's very hard to really deny it for a long time. It's like the plagues. There were 10 plagues that Egypt have to endure when the Jewish people were there. Obviously, Egypt represents the ego. It's a preparation of something you might do tomorrow. So basically, when the foot start to grow and you're still in the same shoes that lock the foot in this pattern, it starts to be more and more painful. It starts to be harder and harder to keep the routine. And there are even stages. The 10 plagues represent stages of what happened when you refuse your call. First, it's just bit annoyance, and you have less meaning, and then you start having these thoughts that run after, like a lot of like repeating thought, an obsessive thought, and daydreaming, and then everything become kind of dark, and you're going to the depression, you're going to rage on everybody, and so on and so on. It's really like stages that some people go through if they are very stubborn. But there is a moment in which you say, I prefer to die than to live another day the way I lived so far. And then usually it's when the mentor comes. What is the mentor? The mentor is usually some knowledge, or a person, or a guru, or even a dream, or even part of yourself that is awakened. And he knows what you're supposed to do, because the call is something very abstract, which means it's not necessarily something that you just feel something like chaos calling, got to do more, got to be more. It's like English poetry and stuff like this. But a lot of poets writing about this call, this urge for something else, and they don't really know what it is. So when the mentor comes, you know what it is. And that's usually come in a moment that I can't do it anymore, like this. And then you have an answer. But it's not so simple. What is it not so simple? Because actually when we really, I'm selling my home and going to India to start a search. I'm leaving, I don't know, my routine and going to study in a yeshiva. I don't know, I'm going to build a ecological community in the forest. Whatever it is, then all the fears, worries, doubts, awaken. The dragon is awakened. It's called the threshold guardian. We have this really big kind of obstacle. And actually, the story of the Jewish people crossing, it's called the sea, the Sea of Reeds, which actually in Hebrew called Yam Suf, which is actually means limitations, not reeds. That's the story. The Jewish people were going out of Egypt. Pharaoh was after them, trying to catch them, which represent the ego, brings them back to Egypt. Why are you running? Are you crazy? How can you leave your job, your high-tech job? Wouldn't you miss the croissant you eat in the morning every day, and the sushi for lunch, and the bonus like in the end of the month or something? How can you do it? Come back. Are you crazy? There's so much Netflix shows to see or something, you know? That's the ego. And the says that one side came Baal Peor, it was some kind of an idol, a cult, which actually people were defecating in the temple. And the idea was that everything is holy. So, and you cannot separate holiness. You cannot say that shit is less holy than, I don't know, a statue of a Buddha or, I don't know, a Torah book or whatever. And it has a flaw in it, even though it's true, ultimately everything is empty and everything is holy, ultimately. The way to see that everything is holy is actually a gradual thing. I can't really go why it is a really big flaw of understanding of what is really holy. But I will just say that that voice tell you everything is holy, so you can get enlightenment in Egypt. Why do you have to go from to the desert to the unknown? Stay home and just read books or something, you know? That's kind of voice. And then from the other side come the Amalekite. Amalekite represent doubt and cooling of the heart, which means and it's also stand philosophically for what is called hedonism and nihilism, which means we are gonna die, nothing have meaning. So what do you care about this stupid adventure and self-realization, following your calling? Just drink a lot of hot chocolate, take I don't know, MDMA every weekend, and have a lot of sex whenever you can, and eat chocolate and eat, I don't know, your favorite, I don't know, steak in this and that, because we're all going to die and nothing mean anything, more or less. So that's kind of the other voice from the other side. Everything is holy, nothing is holy, or nothing has meaning. Everything has meaning, so you can stay at Egypt. Nothing has meaning, so what's the point in doing anything? And then in front was the sea of limitations. It's too big for me. It's too great for me. Who am I to be like Moses and Buddha and Krishna and whoever and Jesus? Who am I to follow on a spiritual or a self-evolving, self-evolution path? I'm just a normal person like everybody, and I should stay in my work and not trying to do anything. Enough should be enough for me. Whatever I get is enough for me. That's another kind of idea of that. I'm very humble. I'm very satisfied with whatever I am. So actually, it's a big trick. Non-spiritual discipline will tell you that being satisfied with whatever you are is true. Sometimes it tells you that whatever material you have is true, but never on a spiritual level, you should be satisfied where you are in a way. There is a point in the journey when you the journey itself, you have to drop it, but that's very advanced and it's not at that point at all. But when you go to India, for example, Tiruvana Malai, so there are these Advaita, Neo-Advaita people who all things are enlightened already, and all you have to do is stop the search, and then enlightenment will come, which is total bollocks. I mean, definitely if a person thinks that to stop the search is what brings him enlightenment, so it will not bring him enlightenment because it didn't even begin the search. When you are very, very solid and mature on your spiritual path, there is the point that the effort itself has to be dropped for the full experience to happen. But then you will not want to stop the search. You will be very attached to the search because we were already a professional spiritual practitioner and not somebody who read a few magazines about Buddhism or whatever. You got to some place, drink chai all day and smoke cigarettes and talk all day about spirituality, and you did 2 hours meditation in your life and you think you're enlightened. It's not this type of people. So that's just a quote, a side note. So anyway, so you are facing all this adversity, and they say that the Jewish people in the desert didn't know what to do. Moses could not help them, and I tell you why he cannot help them in a second. So some of them say, let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to work in high tech. I can still get my old job back. Some people say, let's kill ourselves. We can't really live and be happy in our old way, but we can't also enjoy going to the adventure. The adventure seems to be impossible for me, but going to routine is also impossible for me. I want to kill myself. And some say, let's fight power. Let's fight the ego. Let's, I don't know, just shout and do all this positive thinking, whatever, but stay in the same place. So there was one place, it's called Nachshon ben Aminadav, which means in Hebrew, nechishut, determination. He remembered the call. I went out of Egypt in the time of the Jewish people to get the Torah, like to get into spiritual light, to find the truth, if you want, in the idea of the Jewish story. That was my calling. So I'm going straight there. Doesn't matter how much water is between me and my goal. I'm just going straight. And the story is that as he put his feet inside the ocean was split into two. And what does it represent on a psychological level? We have what it called emotional flooding. All the fears and worries and doubts flood us. And doesn't matter how much you try to fight them and answer them and talk about them, it will not help. It's like a jump into the water. There is a moment you have to jump into the water. And that's a moment of maturity, basically. And it's a leap of faith. And that's the only way to, in all these stories, it's like in the Matrix, Neo is offered the red pill and or the blue pill. Or Eliza in Wonder have to jump into the rabbit hole. Or in Vanilla Sky, you have to jump out of a skyscraper. There's always kind of a jump, and your teacher cannot push you there. Nobody can help you. It has to come from you. Why does the mentor, why does Moses didn't open the water, for example, in the story? Any idea? Why the mentor cannot help you? Why your teacher cannot push you there?
Because then it won't be owned. It won't be claimed by you. It won't be felt as your.
Exactly. Not only that.
No, it will not register even.
So the idea is actually that the fruit has to be mature, because the adventure, remember in the Matrix, all I offer you is the truth. And if you choose the other pill, you get all ignorance is bliss. You go back into this comfort of the routine. And truth is not necessarily fun. So if you are not mature, if you didn't get to the place where you're willing to die or to grow, you will start to have regrets, and you start blaming your teacher, and you got stuck in the middle of the way, which is the worst, which you are not in the routine and you are not really in the adventure, and that's very sad when that happens. So you have to be ready in a way, and that's kind of a big test that comes to make sure, is he ready? Are you really ready? And in life coaching, this is actually what I ask people before I start to coach them. I ask them 3 questions. Do you really want to change? Do you have a calling already? And then you say yes. Do you think you can change? And they usually say yes. But then I will ask him, are you ready for change? Are you mature for change? And not everybody say yes. Some people say, oh, maybe I need to boil a little bit more. Sometimes people need to suffer more. There is no other way sometimes. But to have a little bit more in the samsara, washing machine, before you really, I want out of it, in a way. So that's the story. And then, only then, when the hero crossed the threshold, he's actually crossing for the known to the unknown, from linear time to magical time, from very slow learning process to very accelerated learning process. There are a lot of things that happen. From being from being a soccer fan to being a soccer player. Being somebody who analyzes the players and you think you know better than them, but actually you never played the game itself and doesn't understand. So being the audience or being the actor, And when he does that, that's a really big change in his psychology. And you can really see on a person if he's already was in contact with his hero or not. Then the real hero inside is born. And the hero has 4 archetypes, which are basically symbolize it, which represent different strategies of dealing with the adventure or way to learn thing, which is called the king, the warrior, or the queen, or the warrioress, or the mother, sometimes have some other names, the magician, or sometimes the tribal mother, and the lover, or also the lover for females. And these archetypes, usually the king has to start, because what does the king represent? The king is when you define your kingdom. I'm not anymore a player in somebody else's life, in somebody else's game. I decide to play my own game and bring my own gift, and like they say, there is a Hasidic saying that say, nobody will ever blame you. There was a big tzaddik, big mystical person, and he said, nobody will ever blame me in heaven that I didn't become Moses, or I didn't become a great saint like the old. But the real blame is that I didn't become me, that I wasn't become Rabbi Zusha, that's his name. Mm-hmm. So this is the first thing, you start bringing whoever you are really into the world. And this is the power of the king. And the king has the crown, which means he's also a slave. He's a slave to the divine power. Because usually we are slave to our ego and to the roles our parents want us to play, even when we're really young children. and we still keep playing that role. Let's say one mother needed the child to be proud of, so you are always excel, but I kind of killing myself, neglecting really myself because I need to play this role for my mother. Or some mother wants a child to be eternal baby, so she always feels secure, you never abandon her. So you always play the infantile. It's also a role some people play, and so on. So there are a lot of bondage. Some people are just slaves to their, desires, and whatever comes. They say, "Oh, I'm free. I can do whatever I want." But actually, it's a total slave to, "Oh, I feel like this. I feel like this, and now I have FOMO. I want this. I want the ice cream. I want the party. What should I do?" And then I'm suffering a lot. That's like the Western disease, that you are actually slave to desires to excess, and then you're always in suffering because you don't have anything higher than your personality and lower emotions to actually guide you. So that's actually a form of hell. And so on. So the king is connected to a higher cause, to the plan, to the cosmic plan, but he connected to his role in fulfilling the cosmic plan. And that's what represents the heart. Usually the gem you have on his heart. And then you have the sword with his judgment. Only the king can have true judgment of himself, because he's the one, he's the center, he's in the heart. And he understands your whole being. He's the one who have the understanding of the whole kingdom. So he's the only one who can be the real judge of himself, and he should be the authority of in the world. Most people live to satisfy or please other people, and sometimes his voices, these people already passed away, some mothers, some fathers, some school teacher, whatever, still live to satisfy this voice. So no, he knows, he know what is the real calling, and he has the authority over what is right and wrong. Even if the whole world will say you are wrong, but if you feel inside this is the right thing, he'll act upon it, because he's not a pleaser anymore. And he has the want of ruling, basically, because he has the ability to make everything in his kingdom. If the king is balanced, everything in the kingdom is prosper. All the talents, all the creativity, all the innocence, it all be prosperous and grow basically in him, and also his influence outward on the realm he create even outside of himself. While if the king is not like this, like if you don't have the king, it is blocked, you'll be a wimp person everybody can kind of push. But if you have it in a sick way, that's the shadow way, you'll be a tyrant. Both on yourself, it's like a masochist kind of thing, you'll be a tyrant on yourself, on other people. And then you'll be afraid of everything which is talented around you, everything which is beautiful around you, everything which is innocent around you, try to destroy it. Because you feel very small actually inside. You feel actually disconnected, you feel your ego is supposed to be the god or the king, and then everything that is better, bigger than you will threaten you. So the real king is just a servant of the divine, and nothing can threaten. He's like an emissary to make everything get back into balance. But then when this thing and become our authentic self is created, what happens usually? Immediately there come all kind of powers that try to invade it. Our narcissistic mother, our school teachers, our capitalistic system that want us to feel really small and bad and to buy this stuff so we feel better about ourselves. Only if we have